So the modern world is basically understood as a liberal world that gives utmost or primacy to the idea of liberty. So I said that liberty is largely understood as absence of restraint. So primarily, if you see, people have said that most of the times we have tried to understand liberty from two very distinct varieties. One was the negative and the other is the positive variety. So the negative variety of liberty, and I told you that negative does not mean something bad. Negative is just a figure of speech that denotes that you are free, you are only free when the state does not interfere into some of the activities and provides you the freedom to take your own decisions. The state only interferes when your independence somehow collides with the freedom or liberty of the other. Okay? That's why what you will find in the modern world is that you have so many liberal rights which are accorded to the citizens, but all these liberal rights are not unlimited liberal rights. All these liberal rights have some limitations. We know this as reasonable restrictions. Okay? So basically when you say negative liberty, I am basically talking about those areas where there is non-interference by the state. So for example, your freedom of speech, the state will not interfere as far as your freedom of speech is concerned. But your speech, your freedom of speech cannot become some sort of a problem for the other, because others also will enjoy their freedom of speech. That's why there will be reasonable restrictions over there as well. But when I say positive concept of liberty, it means an interventionist state. So there are so many freedom that you are not able to enjoy in life if you don't have the necessary tools for development. So you're not educated. So if you're not educated, will you be free like those people who are educated? They will enjoy more freedom because they will enjoy more opportunity. If you are not free to decide, take a profession, then, if you're not educated, can you decide in a very wise manner that what profession is most suitable to you? Education is basically about development of one's personality. It enhances your capability. Sometimes your poverty can be a problem in your development. So in those scenarios, we ask the state to interfere. So state will do what? State will intervene and it will provide you certain capabilities, certain capacity, certain capability. So that's why state will provide you education. अगर शिक्षा नहीं है तो शिक्षा देगा, है ना? फूड नहीं है तो फूड देगा, क्लोथिंग नहीं है तो क्लोथिंग देगा, ताकि जो मिनिमम बेसिक एसेंशियल रिक्वायरमेंट है फॉर अ पर्सन टू have that much of capability and capacity so that he is able to progress in life, that is given to the individual. So we say रोटी कपड़ा मकान ये सबसे बेसिक रिक्वायरमेंट है. तो इसलिए ये जो आइडिया ऑफ लिबर्टी है ये भी बड़ा एसेंशियल है. हमने अपने कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को इस तरह से बनाया है that the state is basically looking at the negative liberty concept also. So a list of fundamental right, you will use the language जो अभी हम पढ़ेंगे, where you will use the state cannot interfere, the state shall not discriminate. हर जगह not शब्द आएगा. जहां जहां not शब्द आया इसका मतलब है कि हमने स्टेट को negative obligations दिया है. That is why we say it's a negative liberty sort of rights. But sometimes we also ask the state to perform certain action. जैसे even fundamental right में हमने right to education में कहा है that the state shall provide the children between 6 to 14 years of age a right to education, free and compulsory education. That is called enabling rights. Education, food, clothing, shelter, ऐसे जो भी चीजें हैं. हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल स्कीम चल रहा है, प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना. So this is something which we look at. So these are the two varieties of liberty that you will read across all political philosophies. यानी सारी पॉलिटिकल फिलॉसफी इन दो लिबर्टीज के बारे में खूब बात करती है. यानी एक लिबर्टी ये कहती है कि आपने अगर लोगों के जीवन में हस्तक्षेप किया तो उससे उसकी स्वतंत्रता कम हो जाती है. लेकिन हाँ, हस्तक्षेप करना है और हस्तक्षेप की नीति में हस्तक्षेप करना है मिनिमलिस्ट. इसीलिए ऐसे जो स्टेट होते हैं वो कैसे स्टेट होते हैं? वो मिनिमल स्टेट होते हैं. जैसे वेस्ट ने लिबरल स्टेट बनाया, वो मिनिमल स्टेट है. जब जरूरत होगी स्टेट को, जब आप खुद किसी की लिबर्टी का हनन कर रहे हैं तो स्टेट इंटरफेयर करेगा, देन द स्टेट विल इंटरवीन. दैट्स प्राइमरली द आइडिया। यही बताया मैंने कल शुरू के डिस्कशन में। फिर मैंने एक बात बताई कि लिबर्टी कैसे हमने अपने कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में प्रियम्बल में पढ़ा है। तो लिबर्टी को दो तरीके से इन्होंने कहा। पहला क्या कहा? लिबर्टी ऑफ फेथ, फिर कहा एक्सप्रेशन, फिर कहा लिबर्टी ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन, उसके बाद ऐसे इन्होंने कहा बिलीफ, फेथ और वर्शिप, ऐसे इन्होंने लिखा है। ठीक है, दैट्स बेसिकली द आइडिया। तो ये कहां से मिला हमें? आर्टिकल 19 पढ़ेंगे तो वहां हमें दिखेगा। लार्जली 19(1)(a) में हो रहा है इसके बारे में बात। और जो बिलीफ, फेथ, वर्शिप की बात है, दिस इज 25 and 26 of the Constitution. So in the preamble, the word liberty is explaining, it is more like an explanation of the objectives. कैसी liberty हम अपने देश में लाएंगे so that people are free to express themselves. Again, freedom of expression is a very, very significant liberal rights, civil rights accorded to individuals. Because any society that is not free to express itself will never be a progressive society. जब तक आप express नहीं कर सकते, express क्यों करते हैं, क्यों जरूरी है? Because when in light of new discoveries, new ideas, new theories that may emerge, if you are not a free society, nobody who is having the ownership over the state and its affairs will allow you to say anything that is contrary to their belief system. आपने देखा होगा that in the ancient times, many people who would have a contrary opinion to the prevailing opinion of church or others, they were given punishments, है ना? So everybody, like people like Galileo and others, you know, they became Copernicus, all of them became subject to the I would say misuse of authority by the institutions like church, because their views completely was contradictory to the views of the, you know, religion and religious views. That's why freedom of expression makes a progressive society. So you have to become progressive, you have to allow people to express themselves. Then we have also ensured that in our constitution we provide people the whole paradigm through which they can have a freedom of belief, faith as well as worship. Largely it is about religious freedom that we are talking about. तो इसलिए जब हम प्रियम्बल के ऑब्जेक्टिव्स को पढ़ते हैं तो उसमें प्रियम्बल बहुत स्पष्ट है कि हमने दो तरह से इसको शामिल किया है। पहला कि we are also focused on the negative view of liberty where the state is not interfering. For example, freedom of speech and expression. So the state is not interfering into that area other than reasonable restriction, जो पूरी दुनिया में होता है. And then we are also trying to provide people the impetus by the state so that they can become more free, they become more capable. So state would ensure that you are able to enjoy your religious freedom more and more. Okay, so state will enable you to do that. So that's why we have both views of freedom that emerges out of this whole discussion. I would have also told you a single word I used, मैंने एक शब्द यूज किया होगा, उसको हम कहते हैं थियरी ऑफ नेचुरल राइट्स. ओके, प्राकृतिक अधिकारों का सिद्धांत. और इसमें मैंने एक नाम लिया होगा जॉन लॉक. ठीक है, ये एसेंशियल रेफरेंस है, हालांकि इसको पॉलिटिकल फिलॉसफी में पढ़ते हैं, but I usually give this short information to the students because if you look at the liberal state, this is the theory which creates the idea of negative liberalism or classic liberalism. So this theory is telling you that, you know, these rights are not given to us by the state. There are some essential rights which are given to us by nature. Nature means हम कह सकते हैं God, you know, supreme, almighty. So nature is what हम assume कर सकते हैं ना कि natural है, तो nature है. तो नेचर ने कुछ राइट्स दिए हैं. क्या क्या राइट्स दिए हैं? उन्होंने तीन कहा, लाइफ, लिबर्टी, और हम अभी लिबर्टी पढ़ रहे हैं तो ध्यान से देखो, लाइफ, लिबर्टी, और तीसरा उन्होंने कहा प्रॉपर्टी. दैट इज व्हाई अंडर दिस थियरी स्टेट का काम क्या है? केवल इनको सिक्योर करना. तो स्टेट एग्जिस्टेंस में क्यों है? स्टेट की जरूरत नहीं थी, लेकिन स्टेट की जरूरत क्यों पड़ी? ताकि स्टेट सिक्योर कर सके मेरे जीवन को, मेरे स्वतंत्रता को और मेरे प्रॉपर्टी को, है ना. अगर आप इसको पॉलिटिकल फिलॉसफी में पढ़ेंगे तो आपको पता चलेगा दैट दिस इज वन ऑफ द बेस्ट डिफेंस ऑफ कैपिटलिस्ट सोसाइटी. क्योंकि अभी हम उस बारे में चर्चा नहीं करते तो विल नॉट गो टू दैट एक्सटेंट, है ना. ऐसा मैं क्यों कह रहा हूं? कोई भी नई विचार आया दुनिया में, कभी भी सोचो, जो पुराने लोग हैं, जिसके पास वर्चस्व है, जिसके पास ताकत है, वो कभी नहीं चाहते कि जो दूसरी विचार है या दूसरा जो वर्ग है उसकी प्रभुत्व हो समाज में. So if I am a class who is dominating the system at this point of time, that is time A, I will never be able to allow any other person to again dominate the system at my expense, because somebody will dominate the system at my expense. When my power will reduce, the others will rise. So in comes capitalism. The feudal lords, their power starts declining. Capitalist, their power starts increasing. They have more control over, say, over state. So what can happen? What can be a problem to those rising class? Either they can be killed by the other dominant class, their property can be looted, or they would not be allowed to trade in many areas. So they would have some sort of a connection with the person's power, that be the monarchy, and they would actually not allow capitalism to thrive. That's why John Locke becomes the spokesperson of the capitalist, where he says that this is my natural right, and if you are the state, this is your responsibility. तुम बस इतना काम करो, ये तुम्हारी responsibility है, that you protect my life, liberty and property. So this is one of the best way in which you understand the negative view of liberty, where there are certain essential liberties that is naturally ingrained, ordained by the people, and therefore state only exists and interfere when those liberties under challenge or stress. Otherwise, the state merely has to be a non-intervention state, more like a night watchman. ये शब्द यूज होता है, नाइट वॉचमैन स्टेट. नाइट वॉचमैन आपने देखा होगा, आपके घर के बाहर होता है, वो कहता है जागते रहो, लेकिन क्या दरवाजा खटखटा के बोलता है जाग रहे हो कि नहीं? नॉन इंटरफेयरिंग है ना. वो केवल इसलिए होता है ताकि वो सब देखता रहे. उसकी जरूरत कब होती है? व्हेन सम राइट्स हैव बीन वायलेटेड, है ना, कुछ घटना हो गई तब उसकी जरूरत है. अदरवाइज ही इज वेरी नॉन इंटरफेयरिंग. दैट इज व्हाट द स्टेट हैज टू डू. स्टेट का काम है देखना, स्टेबिलिटी बनाए रखना, और जब किसी के राइट्स डिस्टर्ब हो रहे हैं तो स्टेट विल इंटरफेयर टू रिस्टोर नॉर्मलसी. दैट्स व्हाट वी मीन बाय दिस आइडिया.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.